Well, it's an interesting Friday evening, and depending on where in the world you are, it might be 6:30 for you, as it is for me, or it might be 7:30 if you're in Jamaica. It is Friday night discussions, and we are happy to be with you today. My name is Erraldo Budhan, and I have evangelist Geraldine Garwood, clinical psychologist and behavior analyst, with us tonight, or resident host. So we have both hosts tonight, and we're continuing the conversation rather that we have started last week on crime and violence, the rise of crime and violence in Jamaica. And tonight we're actually looking at murder in the streets. But just before we touch into that, I have to say publicly, Happy New Year, Miss Garwood. We're
Happy New Year to
in
you.
but is the first day both of us on the program from this
True,
for this season.
true. Happy New Year to you, Errol, and Happy New Year to our viewers. It's good to be here. Last week I was not with you,
Uh,
but it was really a very good discussion. I watched it, I enjoyed it. I was just super proud. I said, look at where we're going. We're going places.
yes,
Errol said
yes.
TVJ, and I see it coming for true. I was extremely proud, and the lawyer there, she gave us some deep insights. Yeah,
She
I learned a
did
lot.
like she did. I was like, whoa.
Yeah,
I knew it was going to be good, but I didn't know it was going to be that
that's
good.
good. Yes.
I was like, we need to have a whole justice system conversation.
Yeah, and I and,
And
and I
so
saw
she
that
know,
video on YouTube got over 100 views.
yeah,
Yes, a number of persons watched it, and we want to continue with the same as you continue to watch, like, subscribe,
and
share,
share,
as we continue our discussions on various topics,
yeah.
you know.
And we have to give Sashina, who is always
Yes,
amazing,
yes,
filling in for you last week. She as always, she did well in her
as
capacity as
always,
counseling
as
psychologist, as
always. Yeah,
always.
very good
Uh,
colleague of mine. She know her work and she just have it packed. I
yeah,
like to share
yeah,
platforms with her. She's good at what she does, and it's good to always have her on this discussion. And you will see her from time to time as she
yeah,
shares with us on the platform. So for this week, we were supposed to have the crime and violence from the perspective of the police. And we want to share with our viewers that yes, they will be coming on, but the police have protocols, and I have
mm-hmm,
learned this in relation to social media. So they can't, no police officer can really just appear on a social media platform and share
yeah,
like that. They have to get permission and go through the protocols. And so we are waiting that so that an officer, whoever they selected, will come on to share the perspective of crime and violence from the JCF. And
yeah,
we really are anticipating that discussion, because I really want to hear from them because, as I said, I learned a lot from the legal perspective. So we want to hear from the footmen, those who are on
yeah.
the ground, the lawmen, what they have to say. But this evening we will be, you know, diverging in the topics ourselves as we look at murder in the streets. And before I came on the Herald, I was just reading some statistics, um, murders up 112 people killed
Mm-hmm.
in less than a month. That was
Wow.
RGR News, and the Observer. 112 murders recorded in 23 days, and that was starting in January in Jamaica. And for me, that is alarming. So
Mm-hmm.
they have not counted February as yet, We're talking about January. So they have not really included the murders in February, but we're seeing a high rate of murder in this country, and we need to know what is going on in the minds of
Yeah.
our people. And one of the murders that was really alarming for me, as I reflected on it and listened, was this young man, an educator, who murdered his parents. And we would like to discuss why would something like that take place. When I watch the news, I heard the police officer who was speaking on that case saying that the information they received was that the young man suffered from a mental illness. So he seem or it is alleged that he has a diagnosis that is word on the street of schizophrenia. And so um, he possibly was sharing with his parent, his father, that he was hearing voices.
Mm-hmm.
And I am glad I have a theologian here with me this evening because apparently it is alleged that his father was saying to him, "It is the voice of the Lord." Yes.
This
And
is
so,
interesting.
and
Yeah.
so, not paying attention to the mental disturbances occurring in the mind, one could possibly say that this could have led to this
Mm-hmm.
occurrence of the murder of his parents.
Yeah.
24 years old, murdering his mother, an acting vice principal of St. Andrew Preparatory School, teacher of the grade 6 pep class. And so the students were really grieving and they
Mm-hmm.
actually closed the school for a day to bring in counselors to deal with those
Yeah.
children. And a father, I think he's 60 something years old, who was, I was told, a former pastor in a church. So, what is your take on this, Eraldo? I
You know,
mean,
it's interesting because I'm usually always aware of things that are happening in Jamaica. But I heard of the news, never really dived into it. But hearing you saying it, no, one, I, it's, there's so many things because psychologically, I still don't believe Jamaica is at the place where it ought to be as it relates to persons who have been diagnosed with schizophrenia and even borderline personality. I don't think we're at that place. I've had my encounters. Somebody who is schizophrenic, I always encourage parents and family members ensure that they are always on their medication. So then to say the voice, it's the voice of the Lord, that troubles me, because I'm like, how do you, this is not a Samuel moment per se, and you are not Eli. I'm like, how do you know exactly that it's the voice of the Lord when allegedly he has been diagnosed with schizophrenia? If he has been diagnosed with schizophrenia, it in terms of the legal, this is where the legal mind would have to come in legally. um he would have to go to a psychiatric ward, or a rehabilitation center, something like that, right, Miss Garwood?
yeah, but he seemed to have been functioning. This is a young man who is a teacher, I mean, it wasn't disclosed. I have not heard yet
Mm-hmm.
where he was employed as an educator, but
Yeah.
he was an educator, based on what the news said. The news said he's a teacher, right? And therefore, what this said to me is that he is able to function within his disability,
Yeah.
right? So
That
he's
that
able to
mean
function.
that
That
means he
means
may
that
have,
he may
go
have been
ahead,
on
on
some
his, yeah.
medication or some treatment plan. However, the possibility exists that some severity of stress could
Yeah.
have caused this to happen because the news further published that um, information received from close friends of the family indicated that the father, the young man, was under a rigid, what you would call, rule in his house, right?
Oh.
Especially in relation to his father. So there were some things that he couldn't do. So word on the street is saying that, he wasn't able to have much friends, and if he's going
Mm-hmm.
out, at that age, his father will have to know where he's going, and he wasn't really allowed to actually go out. And both him and his mother seem to have been under some stringent kind of rules in relation to the father and him being a pastor. And at some point, I was wondering if this was a kind of Kevin Smith kind of behavior, practices where, you have some pastors who enforce certain
Yeah.
rules about their spouse and their children. And I'm wondering if this young man just didn't have a moment where him head does chip. So he was actually possibly stressed and he could not handle the rigidity of
Yeah.
what comes with living in that house. And therefore he does flip, because on the news he tried to escape in a car and the car crashed. And when the police got to where he was, he simply said, I did something. He was not resistant,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, from that, you could possibly see if you're thinking from a psychological perspective. This doesn't even sound like it sounds like somebody who can be conscious to say, I knew I did something
Mm-hmm.
that was out of the norm, and he said, I did something, and it caused us to wonder, you know. I remember hearing the police saying that on the news that, some murders or some things you just can't know when it is
Yeah.
going to take place. So you have to check in on your family members, check in on your friends, check in on those who may have a mental illness or you see acting strange because you don't know what can happen. And this can spin this conversation in the world of mental illness. Are we as a country prepared to deal with persons with certain diagnoses? As you have said, I don't think we are at that place. I
Yeah.
don't think family members have been given the appropriate training on how to deal with or have been educated on how to deal with persons who suffer a mental illness. You know, I overheard a lady and she was talking about the same case and she said this to me. Lady that said, me don't want no mad people live with me, I smile when she said. And I said, why is that? She said, after you don't know when them all kill nobody, me don't want no family member we have no mental illness. And she said,
Mm-hmm.
mad live with me because you don't know when them all get it. Me want
Yeah.
nobody come kill me, you know. And it goes back to say that that's why you see so many people who have mental illness are neglected because nobody really have the training or the knowledge. And it's difficult, to care for their family members who may have a mental illness. And this is one of the the challenges and the issue that can also lead to criminal activities.
It is. It's interesting. Last week, when we were talking about factors that influence the rise of crime, the rise of crime and violence, I was saying to our panelist or guest legal officer and Sashina that persons who have been convicted, where in the system, uh in the police force, in the law enforcement system, where in the system do we have rehabilitation officers who are trained psychologists who meet with these people who have committed major crimes, persons who are very homicidal, persons who are serial killer? Do we have behavior specialists meeting with these people, forensic specialists meeting and talking with these people? And when they go into lockup, do we have anybody meeting with them to work out their mental state? Because we have some people who get locked up in the system and they don't change and they come out of the system and the cycle begins. We don't have we have psychologists in Jamaica. The thing is, the government employing people in specific area of rehabilitation. I think that's one of our major downfall, that we don't have proper psychiatric ward. I mean, I talk about Bellevue. I big up everybody at Bellevue. I love my the team at Bellevue. I've been to Bellevue, the presentation at Bellevue, love them. But I'm not just talking about Bellevue. What do we do with these persons who have been convicted of a crime? What do we do to re-socialize them, to get them back into society? Not just to send them to school in the which is good, that some people can get an education within the system, but have we really looked at their mental space? We have nobody. We have forensic psychologists, we're in the legal field that's doing these things. Because in my mind, and the lawyer said it last week, the government confused. as it relates to crime and violence, the government is confused. They don't know what to do. And so Sheena made a great point last week as well, that the government, all they can think about is creating a crime plan. But on the board of creating the crime plan, we don't have no knowledge of if there's a psychologist. We don't have a knowledge if there's a sociologist, a theologian, or an ex-convict who has been rehabilitated and know all the things said. But we have a lot of politicians coming up with crime plans, but they don't have the necessary capabilities of creating a crime plan that actually work. I didn't have
That is
nobody in there.
that is so true, and they need to call on us. We can help them with the crime plan, you know. You don't think so? I believe I can
Yes,
add to the crime plan, and you can add to the crime plan. But it's very important that you say that, because not only I believe should we rehabilitate the person, but we should prepare the community to receive them when they come out.
that is true.
And that is something that is not done. How do we gear the community, prepare them to receive somebody who committed a crime, who have served their time and
Mm-hmm.
is now rehabilitated? We hope that they have been rehabilitated and is now out and coming back to a community. How is the community prepared to receive this person, to relate to this person? What kind of behavior is displayed toward such a person? Very, very important. You spoke about the issue of forensic psychology. One thing I know that I know happen, especially in the prison system, is that of the chaplaincy. And while I believe with all my heart that you need the chaplaincy unit everywhere, because of course that is a means of bringing hope through the gospel to
Yeah,
persons. We also have to be mindful that not everybody who's incarcerated is of that mind, is of that school of thought. And therefore, when we present the gospel, whatever the chaplaincy does, it may not necessarily meet everybody. You
mm-hmm.
understand what I mean?
Yeah,
Because what I find is that most people are spiritual, but spirituality is different from Christianity or
that is
from
true.
being a part of a particular religious sect. And so, how do we meet the needs throughout the chaplaincy unity? Because what we don't want to spiritualize things, and we don't have a practical approach
Yeah,
to dealing with
yeah,
those who are incarcerated. Therefore, we have a problem if we need to assess if our chaplaincy program is impactful, right?
yeah,
And then now we are going to utilize both chaplaincy program, and of course you would have possibly psychologists who work with inmates or who meet with inmates. But you need to find out the frequency of that. Do we have enough resources that we are touching every single inmate? Because if we are thinking about how many jail cells we have in Erraldo and how many prisons, do we have the resources to touch every single inmate?
that's
Because I
true.
know of persons who have been to jail and who have been to prison, who say from they have been in prison, they neither see a psychologist, a psychiatrist, nobody came to them, and they served their time and they came out. You understand? So do we have the resources to meet the needs of everybody and to reach everybody? No, we're in a crisis. We have murder in the streets. So many murders
So
are
many
occurring,
murders.
and it has become frightening.
Yeah. The statistics don't have them on me, but you would have thought that, and Sashina, even though it was a big laughter on last week's program, made such a potent point. You'd have thought that crime would have been reduced because of COVID, but crime increased because guess what? The curfew made people know which part they're there.
Of course,
As
she's
Sashina
right.
say,
Yes, Tanaya
so
Yard.
right.
I
Tanya
can
yard,
come
so me
and
know which
find
part we
you.
come now, we kill you, and stuff like that. When we see the community, and I said it last week, and I said it last week, and Sashina said something. I'm going to use Sashina's one. The theology, I was like the theology of informer for dead, or the mentality. Let me change from theology. The mentality of informer for dead needs to change. We need to restructure that. We need informers.
Farmers.
And let me more say more nasty for those who believe it. We need more informants. We need people who will not hold back the truth. The only way we can curb crime and violence in Jamaica, which is a very small island with so much debt, in the space of from January to now, we have a record that why are we
Yes.
in triple digits and stuff like that? Why are we in that within a month?
But then the thing why I look at murder in the streets this evening is because I realize that the crime is really impacting us globally. You see how many young girls have died in the US. I was reading a case where this young man, this young lady, she had a baby 2 days old. She was going back to see the doctor,
Mm-hmm.
and her partner killed, murdered her, shot her up, and he actually told the police that he threw the 2-year-old baby in the Mississippi in the river.
Oh.
Yes, I have been looking at crime globally because I'm saying, and I've
Mm-hmm.
been watching a lot of, you know, international news to see, is crime only limited to Jamaica? And I realize no, there is an increase of crime also in the US. And I'm
There
saying to
is.
myself, there is an increase in murder in Canada as well. So when you look globally, I am saying now that you have many people who say they are running from here to there, but anywhere we run to, the crime is there. So we
Yeah.
want to understand what exactly is happening. Is it that the mind of the people? I was speaking to somebody, the person said, "It's COVID, man, it's COVID." And I am really wondering, and I've said it already in platforms like this, that within the next 5 years, we are going to have many depressed persons, because I believe the government did not focus on people's mental health
Yeah.
in this pandemic. Their quick response was to wear a mask, to social distance, to gather in small numbers, and all of that, and to turn a yard, which the people did, but in staying them yard, it caused them to have mental instability,
Yeah. It's
mental breakdown. Nobody, no, the children are extremely aggressive.
yeah.
They are aggressive. And if you go into the schools today, teachers, many teachers can attest to that, that since the students begin to come out, the behavioral challenges that they are having, it's really alarming. Are we paying keen attention to people's mental health? Can we say that it is instability in mental health that is leading to so much crime globally?
It's interesting. But I was looking at the Gleaner's statistic that was published on January 17th, 2022. That 72 we had 72 murders in the space of 15 days.
Yes.
And that was just in January 17, and that has increased already. That the murder rate is so high. So we have so many homicide, and there are so many things as we relate to crime and violence. There are so many things to look at, like homicide, and then suicide,
And
and
then
then
murder, suicide.
and the murder suicide. I kill you and then kill myself, and type of thing. And I was gonna say genocide, but that's not a thing. But we have all of these things happening. And last week I asked the legal officer the question: do we think the government has the resources, the people, and the power to
The government
actually
have the
clamp
government.
down
They have
on
the people.
crime?
They have the people. They are not utilizing the people to help. And let me shed some light on that. In relation to addressing people's mental health, there are
Mm-hmm.
many persons who are trained at the master's level as psychologists, both on the clinical side, the counseling side, and you have persons at the doctoral level too. Why are these persons not being utilized? Why are they not being engaged to help to bring some sense of calmness to people's mind, to help persons to unravel what they have been through
Yeah.
over the past couple of years, to help persons to understand what the possible impact of this pandemic has done to them, job loss, I mean, instability in their finances, all of those things, hopelessness. What next to do? Where do we go from here? How do we
Yeah.
continue life, having to deal with and tread through this pandemic? Because it's not going to leave us like no. We have a couple of years to wade through it as it
Mm-hmm.
subsides. But we're and then now we know that we are short in the era of resources as it relates. And that is why I really want to hear the police officers on the ground, or are we not utilizing them properly? Right. And I think having watched the last week discussion and hearing the issue of the Zozos not having any impact anymore, are we wasting time with that? Why don't we utilize the officers them in different areas,
Yeah.
right? And stuff like that. So yes, we are short on resources, but then we have resources for some areas, right? Why are we not utilizing those resources? I think again, as I will emphasize, because this evening I really want to emphasize that we are not focusing on people's mental state. And I believe that the mental state, the psyche has been messed up, and
Yeah.
it is contributing also to the rise of crime and violence.
You know, when you can correct me, what, since COVID I have not seen the government. I've seen programs, but I've not seen the government actually broadcasting not a session, but having a psychologist coming on for the long period of them have some of the time do some fitness something by the government I haven't seen. Now I can be corrected. I haven't seen a psychologist come on to talk in depth about how to cope. Is the local bulletin them where that's come up on the screen and say wash your hand, blah blah blah. But they haven't been addressing the mental state. I remember when I had to go on TVJ for 1 year in the first year of COVID. Um, is the Ministry of Education say Budhan, we need to look at the social aspect, the emotional aspect, and we do the whole counseling session on air to help person, but that was not enough. And I'm just a guidance counselor. The government is really, this is my problem, Miss Garwood, and probably that's why I love psychology so much, especially special education. The government is not focusing much, I believe, in my mind, the government is not focusing much on the mental state of people. They are not. And when somebody shoot up somebody, they don't go and find out why. They just say why him just is a killer, him is a murderer, and they don't see the underlying factors, so they
Yes.
can't help the person. Then lock up the person, but them not help the person, and then we release that person back, and then that person might be locked up with pent up anger, and I'm lock up and for the couple of years him in a prison, I plan him who him I got kill and all of that.
It's not for while he's in prison, he's
And while he's
planning
in prison,
and he's sending out orders. He or
yes,
she is sending out orders because what you find is that you have a number of women now who are involved in crime, as the legal
yes,
person said last week on the discussion. And so we must not think that it's only men. We have a couple women now who are actively engaged in crime. And one thing to that is also causing the crime as well is this scamming thing. This
yeah,
scamming thing is also another challenge that is really, really impacting crime. But one thing that we saw in the news recently is one of our very own police officer, female, who was arrested in the US
mm-hmm,
because she's involved in scamming a number of elderly people of how much $1 million. So today I was having a discussion with somebody and they said, to me if I think that we will ever be rid of crime. This morning I had a discussion with a young man, and he said to me, crime will not stop because the perpetrators behind the crime are the law enforcement officers. Interesting, that is his view.
It's very
And it's
interesting.
sad that he would say that, but it has some validity because more often than not, now we are hearing several of our police officers involved in crimes.
Yeah,
It is
yeah,
alleged that some of them are even attached to gangs,
yep.
and
And they
some of them
provide
are working and they
securities.
provide security, and they are working with these gangs. And so some of the crimes that are actually being committed, police are involved, they are in the midst providing security, or they are part of the plan,
Yeah.
and they are benefiting. So are we are we saying then that those who should protect and serve us have also become an enemy to us?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I am looking for the sociologists. I can't find the stuff, but sociologists says that crime is a part of community. And so while we can't rid crime, we can lessen crime and violence. We can't get rid of crime because it's rooted in sin, and sin will always be here until Jesus Christ come. But we
Right.
can lessen it, and that is the problem. The people, and I agree with totally. Let me not say totally, but I agree with the person that the police officers whom we have placed our trust into to provide security, to provide some sense of security, those are the ones we are even more scared of. I have seen it. I was raised in the inner city. I might not look it or act it, but I was raised in the inner city, and I remember this, and it will never leave my mind that I was in my bed sleeping, and police officers drove up in the scheme in the community, went over my driver's house at that point. That's why Mr. Don't really look into the guy. Hear me, what me have driver, but went over my neighbor's house, who was my driver, who would have taken me places, and in the middle of his sleep, shot him through the window, and then dragged his body. And people are out there looking, and they're all masked up. And from that moment in time, I am wondering, why is it that if, I don't know if it was a criminal or not, but the process or the method or how they went about doing it criminalized them. They themselves look like criminal. And people have this fear now. And this is the thing, Miss Garwood. Now is the reason why people fear to say, a Johnny go shoot up the man. Because they don't know who them are going to talk to him. They might have to tell this officer say a Johnny, and this officer probably are linked to the crew where Johnny in. And people are scared because the persons who supposed to protect them not protecting them. And there are two ways about it. People are scared of the police, some members of the police force, and the gang man and the Dan man, them afraid of them too, even more so than the police officer. And then because of that, we find persons see and blind and hear and deaf. The mentality still lives on in our society.
And that is so true. And so, with such a high rate of murder in the street, then what is the next step for us? And I mean, what role do we see the church play? It's not only praying and
Mm-hmm.
fasting, but what role do we see the church playing in helping to rid crime and violence? Because I do believe that the church has a role to play.
I definitely believe so
How
as
we
well.
execute the role is important. So, what role do you think the church play, Erraldo, and how should the church execute such a role?
Uh, it's interesting. People always try to separate church from state, and I've read multiple articles and arguments as to the separation of church from state. I always believe that the church need to be involved to an extent in some decision of the state. I believe the church should have a platform to speak out on certain things. and to present thoughts and ideas, not just day of prayer, which we are grateful for, but more than just praying, as you said. I remember back in the day when church used to walk street, when people would not walk street as a means of protesting, but walk the streets to talk to people in the community. And to me, that back then, even gunman would have seen bishop, doctor, reverend, pastor come and bill and calm and squad. Mark you, the nowadays criminals have no respect for God and man. But the church, to me, has gone into a space of fear and coward and cowering in the corner, when we should be walking the streets and talking to people. And I can say this to you, that some pastors, help me Jesus, I'm not preaching, so I shouldn't be going strong, but some pastors in some of the inner city know who the criminal is, and while they're praying for their salvation, this is me, I am praying for your salvation, but make sure you get locked up too. You can be saved in prison, but I'm not going to pray for your salvation while you're still out there killing. And I know, and we do have people. I was listening to a case last week, not last week, but the case last year with the Klansman, and to hear the people that were involved, teacher involved, this a person from this level involved, the hierarchy of the criminal system has persons from all areas. And what can the church do? Yes, we talk about praying for your soul, and we're talking about all these things and casting out the devils. But I believe that if some pastors and some ministers, some evangelists literally walk the streets and know the people in the community, and know the people and you will see the fear on some people's face. And you can talk to, while the police can't get some information out, the church can. Me feel like say if some pastor, if they go to Miss Jane down the road, who say me don't see a thing, and then she go see pastor, she go say pastor, and pastor say Jane, you say who they kill something, she go look left right, and she go say pastor, make I just pinch and tell you, but not tell nobody X, Y, and Z. Yeah, the church has a role to play. People are comfortable, and I can be corrected, but people are comfortable at times to speak to a minister of religion. Can me feel like they're not gonna judge me per se.
I agree with that, and I also see the role of the church in engaging parents. I
Yeah,
see when you engage parents and you begin to get in their mind to say, parents, you have to get to the place where you can give tough love. Cause one, I heard a police officer say something one day in my community years ago when I was young, and I want to agree with it based on my living in the inner city and seeing some of the things. He said most of the young boys who stay in criminality is as a result of their mothers. I agree. Their
wow.
mothers hide them. Some of them mothers will wash out the bloody clothes.
Yeah,
When the police come, their mothers will swear for them that they were in their bed. Their mothers support their inappropriate behaviors, their
yeah.
criminal behaviors. He said very rarely you will see fathers doing that. And it's true. He
It
said
is
when
true.
you look at the jailhouse and see the people them are bringing in the lunch and the dinner, come give them when them they are jail. Not that they can't carry for give a picnic, but he's saying that when you see the lineup is women,
Yeah,
mothers and girlfriend. You really see fathers coming with food. You really see brothers coming with food. Mothers and girlfriend. Right?
it is.
Support. I about a month ago, I was looking at it yesterday evening again. A news item where this gentleman somewhere in Bayfam Road in Kingston, right, says he wants to thank the gangsters that kill his son. That's what he said, and he said it on the news, it was in the media.
Mm-hmm.
He thanked them very much for killing his son because his son never did that year. His son take up criminality. him warn him and tell him to stop kill people, and him wouldn't hear. All him, as him father, him turn on. And while him love him son and him go miss him glad him then him want to thank the killers for killing him
Yeah.
because he was becoming notorious. It is very rare. This is the second time I can think of hearing something like this on the news. I was sharing it with my grief and crisis management students. A couple years ago, you had a gentleman also in Portmore whose son was killed. And the man said this. Him glad, so till. Because the boy again ends a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Now I understand the man, the man not necessarily glad say him son dead because there must be a part of him son in the grief.
Yeah.
There must be a good part, but the man is saying all the problem and the stress we may have cease. It is no more. It's very rare you're going to hear a mother says that. It is easier for a father to hand over them son to the law
Yeah.
than the
Than a mom.
mother. The women protect, and I want to say some of these women are is that they are factors towards the crime and violence in the
They
community.
are. I think I've only seen, maybe it's 2 years ago, one incident where a mother said she glad him dead. Where a mother literally was on the news. She said, me talk to him enough time. Me glad them kill him. I think it was some police officers that kill him. Me glad officer, me glad wanna kill him. And you would have thought in yourself, so what kind of wicked mother that? He said if she glad to her son dead, but you can from a psychological standpoint, you can understand. She said she go through enough stress, and she talked to the boy, and she then said top. I don't know if he was a killer, but she said top was a top thief or top this and top that. Sitting there got to you tapping at the wrong crowd, but really and truly, and I think statistics could back this up that women are more wants to cover up the crime per se of their son and or their spouses. We find this now that, and the lawyer said it last week, you're less likely back then, because no I think it's a whole change though. You're less likely to think that a woman is involved in certain criminal activities, and that is why they use this gender, because the female gender seems less on the extreme side.
Yes,
They are more calm, modest, and all of that, and that's why you will find that mostly it's women who have been pushing drugs or carrying the drugs for the drug dealer and stuff like that. So you find that, and in Jamaica, in the inner city, in the crevices and corners of the inner city, you know, say Miss Shirley see wagwan, but because her sunny night, she hurry up and wash out the clothes. It don't mean that she don't feel bad, but I guess there's this this motherly connection, or something that she feel like she have to defend her child, no matter what they're wrong. She have, and some of these people wash out the blood and go church, go pray for their
yes,
son. And I
yes.
want to tell them straight up, God naga and say pray because you have a criminal.
Ah, ah, ah. And some of them are very much benefiting from the blood money.
Yeah,
The blood money helps some of them buy a house. The blood money helps some of them do business. The blood money is helping some of them living big life. And that
yeah,
is some of the reasons why too. Because what has happened is because a number of persons. One thing that also another factor, I mean, they talk about some factors last week that could have contributed to crime. Right. Another one is the whole issue of greed.
greed.
Greed and can't satisfy. And another main one, which I'm going to link to, is unforgiveness. Unforgiveness that leads to reprisal, killing,
Yeah,
murder in the streets, people. And it's unforgiveness. So you kill my family member, me now let it die down. Me have to kill back somebody for you. That's
yeah,
unforgiveness. And that is where you need also the intervention of the church.
Of the
and the
church.
intervention of the psychologist as well, because a psychologist can also help you to deal with unforgiveness, learning to let go, learning to release and let go, right? So unforgiveness is one. So in support of the mothers who want begin to enjoy the big life, enjoy the drug money, and
Yeah,
don't think about how many persons have died, how many bloodshed has taken place to get that drugs money to build this big mansion and you can live big. You understand? Those are things that they need to get in their head. So when parents are benefiting from these things, and I want to commend the mothers who are
yeah,
standing up. It's not all of them, as I say, mostly women that will support their son. But you
yeah.
do have some mothers who take a stand and say, look here, no son. I remember a woman years ago. She had a son, he never worked. She heard that he was involved, and whenever he came in and gave her anything, she said, I don't want your money, I don't want anything from you. And he was upset with her. She said, are you working? I don't
Mm-hmm.
know where you get your money from. Keep your money, sir. I don't want anything from you. You understand? And I want to commend those mothers who are standing up. The son now work, and him a come in and I give him thousands of dollars. Where him get it from figure?
Yeah,
Question that, right? So greed is another factor, a big factor in all of this. It's greed. You see the same thing what my granny said. I don't know if your granny tell you about it. Red eye, Erraldo, red eye and greed. Greed and red eye is another reason
yeah.
why you have the crime and violence. Look in the country. Look globally too. Look at all of that. Another thing that is leading to crime and violence is this thing of obsession. It's so many things. The men think
Especially
that they have
obsessing over.
ownership. I
Yes,
tell you,
that's it.
Erraldo. You need to tell me, because you're one man. What's up?
I I don't know. I
Obsessed.
believe it's
You love someone that is so much obsessed with them that you can't get to a place when the person say, all right, we are not making it. Because first to come in, if you're in this relationship and it is an abusive one, no
yeah,
love no the because you don't love what you heard. So that is not love,
yeah,
right? And that's another topic in an all itself. That is not love, right? That is plain abuse. But then if you come to an amicable, if the one partner say, look here, this is not working out. Me tell you the beat, me no want to listen. Me tell you the argument, me need to go. Let the person go. Why you think that you must snuck out the person's life and then snuck out your life? I believe if you want to snuck out somebody, snuck out your life and go on and leave the
yeah.
person. But why are you snucking out the person and then snuck out your life? That is something that's happening now globally. When you look at the international news, so many young girls, 27-year-old, 16 years old,
Yeah.
so many young girls overseas, internationally, you see, have been murdered, and it is by their boyfriends or their significant other.
And um it's interesting because I believe most of these obsession comes from insecurities as well. Um and self-esteem issues, and the fact that I have you, and even to the point of, if the woman is making more money, that can be a problem, because I know feel less than, I feel less than a man, and that can push one. It can cause domestic violence, or it can push the man to actually try to go out and prove himself, and end up getting himself into something we're not supposed to get himself into. My biggest issue as it relates to crime and violence is domestic violence. I don't know where we get this thing from in Jamaica, where the person have to dead before the police force can respond. If you call the police officer at a police station, I can't wait for the police to come and talk to me about this. If you call a police officer and tell them, say, your neighbor next door, you hear you hear fighting a go on next door, them not come until you call and say, me swear to say somebody dead. Or when them come, and I've seen it so many times, when they come and they split up the people, them say the same set of people were just there were back in the house. And they say that I can't do anything unless something drastic. And I'm like, what type of law? I was telling the lawyer last week, said we have some lawyers when I no teeth, gummy. The law gummy bad. What type of law do we have related to domestic violence? Because that last year, even last year, the amount of domestic violence cases me hear about in a Jamaica, soldier come home and it's youth, and it was weird. I think it was a season where it was literally in the police force between soldier and police.
Yes, yes,
Soldier come and find police in with woman, police come and find soldier. And I'm like, what is God say I know me no want spiritualize it, but it's like the devil just let out some extra demons on the earth that point in period, because we look over certain things, and even this we look the neglect of children can cause crime and violence, especially
yes, yes,
the bracket for look here is last week they sent out a bulletin here in Texas. uh it's always forgive if it's always the white people. I can't put it another way. A bulletin in Texas, a student in the school under siege and something because the student carry gun. When I look, is a white young man. The neglect of children, the neglect of proper care of a child can cause the increase in crime and violence. Because it's not the first thing you say a child kill a parent. In this case that we started out with, it is alleged that the child had that the young man had a disorder. But on all of them have disorder. Some of them have pent up anger, pent up unforgiveness. Some of them just really and truly born in sin, shame, in iniquity, and they feel like the best way out is to get rid of what is in their mind a problem. And the country needs better system, a better structured system to address these issues. You can't just put people behind bars and handcuff them. It hurts me as a person who is studying psychology, who cares about the mind, who cares about people being put back into society to live a healthy life. It hurt me when all the police officer them can say is, well, me shoot him because him shoot off of me, so me shoot him. I said this last week to Sashina, and I'm going to say this and shut my mouth. But I said this last week to Sashina. If I was a police officer, I don't think every case that I'm going to apprehend, I don't think every case I should shoot the person, kill them. Me see you with a gun in your hand, me I go shoot you in your hand with a gun. Because to me, some people, when you shoot them, is an easy way out for them. Last week we talked about capital punishment,
and
hanging
you
thing.
think they want the easy way out? You think some of them must want to die and
No, I
want to be
don't think
killed?
so. I don't think
Okay.
so at all. But I just believe, say, even if you want to die, me not kill you yet. No, sir. You gotta go through some stuff. I
But let me put it
believe that
around, there's nothing for them to go through. What
that
is
is
there
the
for them
next
to go
thing.
through? So look
Oh
here.
boy.
They go behind bar, they watch TV, they eat food.
Luxury life.
If them go in the hospital and get 3 meals a day, people out here that having 3 meals a day, they get 3 meals per day. Right? Many Jamaicans not don't have that. Can't
Yeah.
even find that to give their children. If they go to the hospital, I can remember a criminal element. He died now. Right? He was hospitalized. And when him in a hospital, him a command the nurse, hey nurse, come turn on the TV and you think I hear money by it, a
What?
government money. Don't a Kingston Public Hospital. Now, when the situation came to my attention, I was so upset when I heard. And in my head, me think some kind of thoughts now say, the nurse not smart. Cause him
Yeah.
never watch and never TV. I mean, it right there, so you understand what I mean? Right? Not that I'm promoting crime and violence, but I'm simply saying that even if you say you want them to suffer or you want them to go through a punitive process, let's just put it
Yeah.
that way, if you think so, there's nothing else for them to go through a punitive process, and many will say that their processing should not be punitive but be more rehabilitative, which is what should be endorsed. So they should
Yeah.
go through intervention strategies, right? And they should be able to face family members. That is the restorative justice part. Family
Mm-hmm.
members of the persons that they would have hurt or murdered or raped, or and probably ask for forgiveness, or family members to be able to express to them how what they did made impacted their own family. Those
Yeah.
are things that should happen. Yes, we know of the restorative justice that people have been training it, but I am not hearing much of that happening where family members are getting the opportunity to meet with these criminal elements and to express to themselves the impact of their actions on their family systems. You understand what I mean? So
Yeah.
that is not
Yeah.
that is not being done. So I can recall though years ago when one of my dear friend and prior partner in ministry had a son that was murdered by the police, and we went over to Spanish Town, somewhere over that side, for the autopsy. And while sitting there, another lady was there who came also for the autopsy of her son. And I sat there and I thought she wanted to just vent.
Yeah.
And a young police officer was there also, because I believe police officers need to be present for the autopsies. So apparently she knew the police, or she's acquainted with the police, rather, let me say that. So she said this to the young man, and I sat there. She said, "We'll never have to kill my son, you know. We'll never have to kill my son." She was talking to the police because my ears said, she never make excuses for her son. I must come in there. I
Mm-hmm.
know my son in the wrong way, and I know say him in the wrong company. And my ears say him fire after uno. And but my ears say when no corner him kneel down upon him knee and same our Father prayer. And after him same our Father prayer, uno kill him. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening. And the policeman said this to her: "Lady, I never kill your son. I wasn't there. I am just here for the autopsy, but me never shoot up their son." But he said this, and it never left me. He said, "Never you fire at the police. Because when you fire at the police, you're sending a message to them that you want to take out them life." And it's true.
Yeah.
So they are going to defend themselves. And in defending themselves, they're not going to allow you to take out them life. So who you think are going dead? You.
You.
He said that. Then he also says this that never left me. He says, "Lady, every bad man with the police corner always I say them our Father prayer. And if we feel let go, everybody will say them our Father prayer." Think about it, Erraldo. Think
Yeah.
about this. If everybody will say them our Father prayer, after them fire upon the police and the police corner them, and them take out them little blue Bible where them keep, them little New Testament and them back pocket where them keep. If everybody will do that, the police did for spear, not kill them, even though them fire for them and threaten for them life.
Yeah.
Think about it. What would happen in Jamaica? The policeman said that never do. You couldn't handle crime and violence in Jamaica. And that took a toll on my head. I sat there and I listened to the conversation. I was right there as the young police also turned to me now and share his story. He said, "Lady, you see me? When I was in high school, I took up myself, go follow a friend. Left
Yeah.
school and go follow a friend, and they're the wrong place at the wrong time. Go a friend yard and one boy come out say I show my friend gun. And look, a police draw down upon way. And my mother come on my yard and warn me in front of my mother and tell me say because I did lose my life because I'm at the wrong place at
Yeah.
the
The wrong
wrong
time.
time." Him say sometimes some of them they at the wrong place at the wrong time. So in that moment, the policeman share a lot of insight. Never you fire at the police. One, because if you fire at the police, you set up yourself to lose
To
your
lose your
life
life.
because you have threatened the police life. Two, being at the wrong place at the wrong time. Sometimes not everybody quote unquote in quote guilty, but them they're the wrong place
Place
at
at the
the
wrong
wrong
time
time.
with the wrong people.
Thirdly, the wrong people. Thirdly, the man said this. If every criminal will say them our father prayer did fi let go or did fi spare, think of what Jamaica would be like. It sound harshy, me I say that it sound harsh. And I'm from it just sound away, but it
Yeah,
makes sense.
it
What
makes
he
sense.
says makes sense. Murder in the
It
streets, it's bad.
but I can't wait. We're out of time, but I can't
Yes,
wait next week to hear actually from the police officer and actually to hear some stories if it is possible. I know it's very stringent now when it come on to law enforcement officers speaking on certain topic. But it's interesting. So many things when you're looking at crime and violence, so many things that are real factors that are not being addressed. And so many young people, I think that was the point I'm trying to make. We have so many crimes now being committed by young people.
16, as young as
16 year
16 year
old
old boy.
putting up, we see police, the JCF putting up wanted poster with 16-year-old faces and stuff on it, being real. This is a for next week topic because I know this is something that the police, especially those in Mocha, would have understand that there are certain young men from the age of 8 and 9 being trained
Yes,
in the criminal activities to carry out certain things, to sit down on a bucket. I think it was Soshina said it last week, and call out and say red stripe, red stripe. When is this red? When is the police coming in? There are people, children whose parents are scared of the criminal forces, so them not say nothing, and then those who are literally a part of it send their child out to be a part of the criminal act. But we are out of time. Just like last week, I was like, boy, this topic is sweet. We will have you sit down,
yes.
and because there's so
Talk and
many
talk
angles
and talk. There's so many
to look
angles
at
to
it
look at.
from.
But we want to say
Um,
that we are concerned about crime and violence in Jamaica
yeah,
and globally. We are
and globally,
concerned about the number of murder, suicide as it relates to um, relationship problem. And that is something we need to talk about um, probably in the next season. How are we going to help men and
yeah,
women deal with relationship and to if they are having challenge in the relationship and they want to separate, how to separate amicably without either partner being hurt in a particular way where this lead to murder, suicide, right?
yeah,
We can clearly see that there are a number of factors. Some were discussed last week. We look at some again this evening that is contributing to crime and violence. We can clearly see that there is the impact of the pandemic as it relates to people's mental state
yeah,
that contributes to crime and violence. We can also see that mental health is important and we should not take it lightly, right? And we should not spiritualize, mental health. And we should look out keenly for signs, so that we can eliminate or we can be proactive in
yeah,
dealing with any form of violence that may occur. Again, this topic does have me going, going, going. I'm concerned, for us as a people, but we know that there is hope. There is hope. And we
yes,
also know that there is also hope, as the songwriter say, in the Lord. And so we trust him, as he continues to give guidance. Again, we call out to the policymakers and those who are putting the crime plan together, get other heads on board,
yes,
right? Pull from society as you develop such a strategy so that we can help. Everybody has a part to play in helping to curb crime and violence, that we can make Jamaica the best and safest place to live in the world. That's
Yeah.
my final thoughts.
And the motto, not the motto, but the new tagline, I think Jamaica plays to. I don't remember it very well, but raise family, have a good job, and live happily. We can only do that if we work together. Second program next week, we are continuing the topic on crime and violence, and by that time we should have a member from the Jamaica Constabulary Force. More than likely, they're probably their communication unit to come and share with us the grown man's perspective of how crime and violence has impacted Jamaica and how we as a community can work with the police force to help reduce crime and violence. Or host is back with us this week and will be back with us next week. I hope clinical psychologist and behavior analyst Geraldine Garwood and evangelist in the Lord's church. And just in case you're watching this and you say, boy, may I want to look up Pitney where him just rude and stubborn, reach out to Ms. Garwood. It is Behavior Change Consulting Services. Type that in your search box in your search engine, and you can go on the website and subscribe to Tips for Behavior Change. And we will be back same time, 6:30 if you're in Texas, and 7:30 if you're in Jamaica.
Jamaica.
Central Time 6:30 and Eastern Standard Time 7:30. And by then, hopefully, we'll be on YouTube and also on our Facebook pages at that time. Until we meet again, my name is Erraldo Budhan and our beautiful Geraldine Garwood. We will see you next week. Take care.